Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I
Awesome.
know. Same thing. Just cutting out a few things just changes everything.
For
Changes
sure.
everything.
For sure. Hey, here we
So
are. We are live.
yeah.
Welcome,
Yeah.
everybody.
Yes. Welcome. Welcome to the world
Welcome
of
to the world.
YouTube
Here
and
we are.
Shane and Amy, which
Yeah, man.
it's a
Right
very
on.
small world over here.
It's tight. It's tight.
Yeah. Yeah.
Small circle.
Yeah. Yeah. Small circle. Small circle.
Glad you're in it though. Glad you're here with us
Yeah,
today.
same. Glad that you guys are here with us and following along and sending us, great information and emails, and it's great. So keep it up. Send us more. We would love to hear from you. Shane and I talk a lot about the power of consistency. And Shane, when I went to do, because I'm always a little research bunny. So I went to research. I didn't realize that there's like a book about the power of consistency. And so I want you guys to know today, we are not reviewing the book, The Power of Consistency, but I haven't read it. So it might be something to look at. But I will say that we have lived it. We have lived with it and we have lived without it. And I'm going to tell you, consistency wins 100. I don't care what you're doing. I don't care if you are in a workout routine for 7 minutes a day. That's my workout routine. Or if you are, I don't know, like winning the world for your product. As long as it is consistent, that is what ultimately really separates the people in the crowd from those that are actually getting things done and actually seeing results. Don't you agree, Shane?
Yeah, I do. And I think one of the reasons it does that is because it's very black and white. Either you were or you weren't. You either are or you are not. You can't say, well, I'm kind of consistent. No, you're if you're kind of consistent, you're inconsistent. This is one of the way, you know what I mean? Like it just it's a divider between those who are successful long-term and sustainable and those who experience the highs and lows, the ups and downs, the inconsistency. Inconsistency begets inconsistency. So if I show up inconsistent in one area, it's going to affect another area. It can't be isolated to say, well, I'm just inconsistent over here. Like, nope, there's carryover. There's impact in all areas. So I agree with that statement. It is definitely one of the things that separates, the good, the average from, the exceptional, the above average. Yeah.
Well, there was someone, I don't have it in front of me, but someone wrote an article on of a contributor to Forbes wrote an article about consistency. And the writer said, any skill can be learned through consistent action, right? So business owners that say, I don't have the time or I don't have the skill. Basically what they're saying is I'm not willing to be consistent at something long enough to figure it out. Right. So, and I would even go as far as to say most people are not willing to do something for 100 days in a row. I mean, that's just the truth. Most people will not do anything for 100 days in a row. And it's interesting that challenge alone will radically change the course of someone's life. If they'll just pick one thing and do it for 100 days, just so they can prove to themselves they can. Take a bath every day for 100 days, take a walk every day just start with something as simple as something in your daily routine, and see, I mean, if you are a coffee drinker, you have the power to be consistent, so much so you will drive out of your way to find coffee when needed on a day you don't have it at home, because you have trained your body to need it and to expect it. And so there is something about the power of consistency that wins. And there is a study, I'm going to go grab it. It is by a gentleman named Troy Smith, and he is the assistant professor of management in the University of Nebraska Lincoln's College of Business. And so he did some research that shows employees, and I would even tag that as owners, display greater performance and well-being when the level of challenging tasks they work on is consistent or stable over time, Smith said. He goes on to say, however, employees display poorer performance and well-being when the level of challenging tasks they work on fluctuates or is inconsistent over time. So it's interesting to me that basically what he's saying in my world of ownership, what I hear him saying is, if you are a start-stop owner, so if you start to do consistent lead generation that's organic, but you stop, you go for 3 or 4 days, you don't get what you want, so you stop for 3 or 4 days, then you start over, right? Like that start-stop is going to, over time, produce poorer performance in you. You are not going to want to do it. And it's not going to produce enough results to keep you in it long enough. Make sense?
It does. It reminds me of an owner that I worked with some time ago who had what he called the busy season. He's like, and he would always say, "Oh, we're coming up on the busy season," and that was like the time where higher volume of orders, got to really focus on the throughput. I mean, you get it, busy season.
Yeah.
And as I watched him do, one of the things that I saw, there was a pattern that was emerging was people rose up to the challenge when it was busy season, and then what's the opposite of busy? Non-busy. It's like people
fluctuating.
My goodness. And that fluctuation, it really did, I think. And I didn't know this at the time. If I'd have known what we were talking about today, I could have helped him be able to see like that ebb and flow is not healthy. It is not good to say, hey, now's the busy season. By default, everything else is unbusy and no longer important. And really what, was happening was he was not getting his maximum contribution at the time he needed it most because there wasn't consistency of an expectation, of a standard of expectation. It's like, hey, busy season, we're supposed to be on. Off season, we can just, whatever happens is cool. That affected his busy season as much as it affected his off season, right?
Yes. And that distinction between when I put value on busy and I devalue not busy, that sends a very clear message to your employees or to your team. It even sends a very clear message to you in your brain. It literally floods your brain with dopamine and keeps you going until it's time to no longer produce like that. That's our body's way of being available for high production, right? Now, we are not to live at that high level of dopamine all the time, but when you are consistent at the challenges of the day-to-day building of the business or the day-to-day attending to the work that you were hired to do, what happens is you start to find satisfaction in getting better, going deeper versus starting and stopping and starting and stopping. It's like, okay, how can I get better at my job on the days that the job is not demanding so much from me?
Yes.
Right. Or the work is not demanding so much from me. And it is very hard to remain present if you have not built in the skill of consistency. So some things that you've observed, Shane, Shane is an owner. I am an owner. So we're going to talk to you about what we have had to do to build the skill of consistency without a manager and without a paycheck. Right. But you over the last year or so, I would say, right? And even before that, you were a leader in a gazillion-dollar company. No, you were one of 3 that built it from nothing to gazillion dollars. That is a far cry, you guys, but it was still amazing, the results you guys had. And you were a part of that. So you were also the manager of employees, but now you are the coach inside of companies walking alongside leaders whose processes build in consistency and keep the environment challenging as a rule. And you are in environments where there is nothing consistent. What is consistent is inconsistency.
Yes. It's
the only thing you can count on. We don't know what's going to happen today. Yeah. And
can't tell you it's going to be different. Yep.
So I'm curious if you could give us 2 things that you have seen as you're inside of these companies right now, especially just with the way the culture is and the environment of our country anyway, financially, economically. So what have you observed from leaders who have built in processes that just the skill of consistency is automatic if you become an employee there?
Yeah. So I think the first thing I would tell you before I give you the 2 is all of these leaders have in mind the long game. So there's a level of patience that they have that is fueling their consistency, because they're not after the quick hit, short, big, they're thinking long game, right? Significant impact, significant, stability, long game. So they have that in their mindset before they go in and start doing what I would say are the two things I've seen that they do to keep it. Number one is they have standardization. So they're not at the place of saying, I don't know what the best way to do this is. No, they have decided this is the way, and they stick with it. Right. So they have made a decision. This is the way in which we're going to do things. Some of them use, these old school terms like standard operating procedures, right? Like when you and I were coming out, like, hey, what's the SOP for, but others of them, they just say, you know what, I've got a conviction. This is the way that we do this because I've had enough of the experience to know this works. So then they focus on the fundamentals rather than deviating from that standard. Right. So they standardize things, and now they focus on the fundamentals of doing that better and better and better. I work with several owners of a large franchise, and this is what they do. They've got these standards that are in place, and they work on the fundamentals. How can we get people to do them more efficiently? What are so they're not looking at reinventing the wheel. They're like, how do we make that wheel continue to spin at a rate that allows more people to come through and experience our service? The second thing that I see that these people do is they have the 24-hour rule. And the 24-hour rule is they allow themselves 24 hours to celebrate and to sulk.
I like it.
So when you are an owner and you get a big win, like, like, okay, that was one big win, but we got to eat next week. We got to have more wins than just that. When you're an employee, like, you can rest on your laurels a little bit because you're going to get that paycheck in 2 weeks.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? So employees tend to say, man, you know what? I hit my sales goal this month. So I'm going to take it easy for that first week of the month going into next month because I deserve it. So owners and employees who give themselves, the 24 hours to both celebrate and sulk have a greater chance of being consistent because they stay in the work no matter what the work is producing.
Yeah,
right?
That's good.
Sometimes they're extreme highs. Man, you land that deal that you thought, oh my gosh, I never thought I'd land that deal. Give yourself 24 hours, celebrate it, and then come in the next day and say, how can I get better? How can I get better today? Based on what I did yesterday, I can get better today. Now on the sulking side, that's so Southern. The sulking side. The sulking side, it does the same thing, right? Like we take a major hit, we have a major failure, we lose an account or we make a mistake, and the tendency is to wallow in it. So we either naturally wallow in success or we wallow in failure. None of those things produces consistency, produces apathy, procrastination, the very opposite behaviors that consistency demands. So allow yourself 24 hours to sulk. Like, dadgummit, that was really bad. I wish that hadn't happened. Okay, based on what I learned, what am I going to do now to get back on track? And it is getting back into it again. So those are just a couple of things that I see. I'm curious for you. You see anything in addition to that?
I mean, we see a lot, right? There's a lot we could add to this list. But I agree with you. The first, they've got to be stable. Then they standardize things, right? Yes. And then they stick to the fundamentals of that standard. And what ends up happening is they end up going deeper, is what I heard you say, instead of just adding on more stuff. Yes. It's no, we have the standard. How can we make the standard better? Yeah. That's what it's about at the end of the day. And then the second thing, that 24-hour rule to celebrate and sulk, that is a major obstacle to owners, is that resting on your laurels, man. Even if you don't meet the goal, most owners are just happy when they just are able to take themselves out for a nice dinner or buy a pair of shoes, and they're just done for the remainder of the month. I'm like wait, wouldn't you like to do that next month and the month after and buy something for your friends?
Let's put a run of these things together here.
Yeah, exactly. So I know on the owner side, one thing that is a huge, huge opportunity
Mm.
is also they've got to have some standards, right? But those standards first need to be laid out from what is it that I want to achieve here.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's got to be reverse engineered. So in an owner's world, that really needs to be a number. How much money do I need to make? Like really getting honest. I think before you can be consistent, you need to be honest as an owner about what is it that I need? What is it that I want? What is it that I'm willing to do? What is it that I'm not willing to do?
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
and
really
then
good.
you've got to go to a plan of attack by reverse engineering from what I want back down the chain, not starting at the bottom of, well, if I just start working, then when I make the money, I'll reverse engineer.
Figure it
No,
out.
because
Yep.
you will never do it because you don't know what you're shooting at. So the lack of consistency immediately is a natural byproduct because I don't know what to do next. Like, oh, something worked, but I don't know what, and I don't know how I got this contract, but this is amazing.
Shoes for me. Shoes for me.
Steak for me. Shoes for me. Right. Like, and that's it.
Yeah.
And then we don't really know how we got there. And so, that's one thing I would add to the conversation is that we must be honest about where we are and reverse engineer exactly what we need, what we want, and be asking ourselves those pillars you gave us in the last episode, those 5 pillars, so powerful when it comes to making decisions. Answering those questions help us to remain consistent because it's always dealing with the obstacle instead of ignoring the obstacle and hustling the obstacle away or eating the obstacle away or ignoring the obstacle or pretending that there isn't going to be any obstacles. Like that's just not reality.
That's right.
Right. Yep. So that's what I would add is that knowing what we want and reverse engineering the steps to get there. And if we don't know what it takes to get there, we need to find somebody who's gotten there and ask them, what do I do to get where you are? And then you've got to determine from there, what am I willing to do that they did? And what am I not willing to do that they did? Right. And that is a very important conversation. It doesn't matter at what stage of the game you are as an owner. It doesn't matter if you're just starting out or if you're trying to get to from 5 million to 10 million or 10 million to 20 million. You have to have this honest conversation. And you have to be willing to standardize things. You have to be willing to stay in the fundamentals of that standard that you set. And then you've got to stay in the work. Do not celebrate for 5 days and don't sulk for 5 days.
That's right. That's right.
You have got to stay in the work, even if it's a little bit every day.
That's right.
And I think the one thing that I would say for me has helped me remain consistent is I realized that my work had 4 steps to it. And if I would just do those 4 things every day, I was always producing, even if I didn't see the fruit yet. I know that if I do these 4 things every 30 days, I'm going to achieve the outcome I want. And I have. Yep. I have. And so
I was going to say, I'm grateful that you figured that out in advance of me coming along so you could share it with me. And that is this. Yeah, I'm just telling you, if you're watching this and you're saying, hey, I need some consistency and I don't know how to get from here to there, and you got a number, then these four things that Amy has defined will help you drive there. And I encourage you to reach out, have a conversation around how you can step into what she's created. It's fantastic. Turn my business around.
Yeah. It's just so simple, but it's so hard to stay in only 4 things because our mind wants to tell us, no, there's 40. No, actually there isn't. There isn't. And if you get into the 40, you lose the power and the reward of being consistent. And it really just comes down to consistent people are disciplined people. Things are much simpler in their world. They tend to have a budget. They tend to actually follow a budget. They tend to, if they travel, they're not doing all the things
That's right.
At the most luxurious price point, even though they could. Like there is a discipline to people that are consistent that people that are not consistent do not have. Because if you're a start stopper, like Shane said at the top of this episode, if you are a start stopper in one area of your life, you're a start stopper everywhere.
Yes.
So as we sign off today, I am going to call you to a challenge. Find something to do for 100 days. Something. Drink 8 glasses of water for 100 days, right? You know, if you don't exercise, then don't say you're going to take a walk.
Right. Yeah.
For 100 days.
Start where you are. Start where you are.
Brush your teeth 2 times a day for 100 days in a row. Like, just very, very simple. Do 1 load of laundry and put it away for 100 days in a row. Not all the laundry, just one. I'm telling you, that one habit changed my life, you guys. That one habit. Cool. So, I mean, really, really, really thoughtfully think about this and take the challenge. Will you do something for 100 days? Because I promise you that you will become a person of consistency if you do that. So with that, Shane and I are going to sign off. And I just want to remind you that systems run your business, and systems with standards scale your business. I'm even going to go that far.
That's real good.
But it's you and me. It's the people, it's the humans that run those systems. And if we are inconsistent, the system is inconsistent. We cannot be inconsistent and expect a system of technology to run around the internet and make us money. It does not work like that. So, or to get us a result that we want, or to get people to follow us and make us Insta famous. You have to be consistent at the actions that get that kind of following. So I just want to leave that with you. And I can't wait to hear how many people are going to take the 100-day challenge.
That's good.
So Shane, thank you so much. Thanks for piping in from your hotel life.
Right on.